Okay.
And we are live.
All right, folks, welcome back to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. We've got 20 minutes with a hard stop at 4:15 to continue our practice of discussing batches of bills and getting a sense of where folks, are and what thoughts they have on these bills. So I think since we went off live, we need to reintroduce ourselves really quickly. So I'm Representative Kathleen James from Bennington 4.
Scott Campbell, St. Johnsbury.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Weston.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Territory, Washington 2.
Graham Kleffner, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
Great, thank you. All right, so we were, folks in the room. Matt?
Oh, sorry. Matt, go to Meadow Hill.
Great, thank you. All right, so we were talking about age 16. And where were we?
Yeah, I was asking about the costs and benefits of leaving it in place versus repealing it. And I think we determined we didn't know. As I recall, that's where we left it.
I have reached out and I haven't heard anything back yet.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Representative Howland.
I thought the existing law required action by the legislature in this
It's
millennium.
It's the opposite of that, actually. The check back provision that we wrote into the bill required the PUC to basically design the playbook, do the studies, and deliver that back to the legislature. And the clean heat standard very specifically cannot go into effect without affirmative action by the legislature. So the clean heat standard as it stands by law can't move forward, can't take effect, can't be implemented unless the legislature develops a new bill from scratch and that it's passed by the House and Senate and signed by the Gov.
Except for the two provisions that are
Correct.
correct.
Yeah. So the clean heat standard is essentially at this point dormant unless we were to develop a brand new bill.
I was confused.
And the parts that remain, so that the actual clean heat standard is sitting on the shelf, essentially. The parts that remain are the fuel dealer registry, which remains in effect. 3 positions at the PUC that will be unfunded. They're not in the budget. They're not in the governor's proposed budget, I don't believe, for FY26, and the PUC is not planning to ask for that money. So it mostly comes down to the fuel dealer registry.
Designation of bulk delivery agent.
Yeah, and perhaps we need to find out about that designation of the
Direct delivery agent.
of the default delivery agent, which is the that was in the original bill that was envisioned as the
Alternative compliance.
right. So the revenues raised would go to
Incentives.
the revenue raised would go to incentives, and those incentives would have to be delivered by some sort of Efficiency Vermont like agency. Which, I guess at this point is moved. So I don't know what happens to that DDA. I haven't looked at the statute, to be totally honest, recently to find out whether anything is dangling with that. Yeah.
I said there's a word.
Yeah.
I have my binder in the car.
Yes. Rep. Kleckner.
May I interrogate Rep. Southworth? Do we have to do that in committee?
No, we don't. We're just having a conversation.
We just get to grill each other. That's excellent. I'm wondering about the same question that I posed to Representative Higley when he was here, which is, it sounds to me, and I want to understand your concern fully, that the concern is it's going to raise the price of heating oil for Vermonters.
That isn't entirely true.
Okay.
My concern is the overall cost of electrification borne on the backs of Vermonters is my concern.
Got it.
This isn't quite. Well, the clean heat standard is because it turns into heat pumps and all of that.
And lower carbon density biofuels and
Correct.
there's all that stuff. So, I mean, my sense is that in this economic moment with Vermonters struggling and in this political moment, we as a body are probably uninclined to do anything to raise the price of heating oil. So it's my personal opinion. I'm not so about that. But I do wonder if there is some way to fund all the clean energy work that Representative Campbell talked about that does not fall on the back of Vermonters. Whether that would particularly address your concerns or whether you have other concerns as well.
So, man,
Yeah, we're just talking. I'm not,
so my view is all of the information that's coming forth shows that Vermonters are already making headway without having standards, mandates, goals, whatever you want to call it. We're already naturally going that way. I think, and this is my personal opinion, if we key in on weatherization and efficiency through the existing efficiency Vermont, through your Northeast Kingdom community actions, through your county or whatever weatherization programs, I think we can actually see more of an increase in doing that by keying in on what we already have in place rather than creating something new. I do believe Vermonters as a whole save energy wherever they can, whenever they can. They're not wasting stuff. Vermonters don't waste. I think that we can hit goals that are reasonable by keying in on the efficiency and weatherization through the natural and with the natural progression of Vermonters doing what they can when they can to switch over. That's my opinion. If the car breaks down in the middle of the road, tires fall off of it, are we gonna just walk away and leave it running? No, we're gonna have it removed. That's what I equate to clean heat standard.
I agree with all that. It's certainly consistent with what Chair McNamara from the PUC said. We have working programs, let's build on those when he suggested this wasn't the right program for us. I do wonder though about if we just let things progress as they are. I mean, right now, cars and heat pump penetration, those things that we've discussed have a higher upfront cost, but then lower your operating costs going forward. The penetration is higher among higher income Vermonters. And so the benefit to having a car that you never have to get an oil change and that, I mean, I'm paying like the equivalent of 90 cents a gallon or something to fill up my car electric at night in Burlington. Like, how do we get those benefits to the people who need them more without doing something more than letting the current programs do their thing?
I like hybrid vehicles because they afford more of a broad flexibility within the state. Some areas, full electric just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I'd say that with heat pumps as well. I don't see in some climates where it's beneficial, especially because you need more than one in some of them, or you need the whole house ducted heat pumps. That affordability isn't there because you're still going to have costs associated with it that still have to be borne on those people. Where, you hear low interest or no interest loans. Well, it's still a payment.
It's a debt, yeah, which a lot of people just won't take on.
Right. And then you look at the cost of electric bills. I mean, you yourself are fully electric. I mean, you look at your monthly electric bill in the same way with Representative Camp. Is that something that's affordable for Vermonter? I mean, is it something that they can do without really looking into how they heat their home? Everybody's gonna be different. They have wood pellets, they have firewood,
Yeah.
they have a combination of this and that. Has anybody ever really looked at the total cost to these people and how they manage that? I don't think we have really looked at the management of how these people finance their own living.
Um, setting aside the mechanism of the clean heat standard, because I think we've all acknowledged, I am certainly not writing a bill to advance the clean heat standard as the PUC designed it and bring that to this committee. I think we all understand that the way the PUC designed it isn't going to happen right now. What I'm interested in, the reason why I'm so interested in this conversation is that if you strip away the mechanism of the clean heat standard, I think what we're all talking about, like a shared value I hear, is how can we help Vermonters who want to weatherize their homes? Or I agree, if you think about order of operations, it kind of goes electrical panel upgrades for many folks, electrical panel upgrades, weatherization, heat pumps, or, some other mechanism. And so the things that appealed to me about the clean heat standard, those underlying values were, it was going to raise more revenue. It was going to raise money. That money would be used for incentives, not mandates. So it's one thing I had to explain to my constituents many, many times, that the clean heat standard was going to raise money for a wide range of incentives that people could take advantage of if they wanted to. And we tried to design a standard that would direct that money toward the people who need it most, the people who can't afford the upfront costs. And so, my question is, what ability do we have as a legislature during this biennium to try to move forward on those goals? If those are the goals we all agree on, what can we find a pathway to try to make progress there?
Yeah, I would say that some of the traditional means that we have of helping low-income Vermonters, they're very reliant on federal funding. They're reliant on Efficiency Vermont, and they're not really dialed into or connected to the energy transition, which the clean heat standard it's a market mechanism. So it is dialed into that transition. So it's been designed with a certain set of inputs. Those are the existing goals that we have in statute. Prioritizing credits, prioritizing measures being delivered to our lowest income and moderate income Vermonters. And it's also been designed to be the only vehicle that will achieve the thermal reductions. And so I think I like the idea of market mechanism because it supports not only, this transition is happening. And so there are going to be winners and losers. And, there are losers in the business sector, in the fossil fuel delivery sector. Right now, period. We're seeing that market transitioning, and, those that are not going to keep up or don't see opportunity for themselves are selling out. And, we are seeing that transition happening. This is part of my other bill about, who's going to get left behind as this transition, the frog in the pot continues to go along, and then all of a sudden we have an emergency because, you know, the lowest income or the most rural folks are not transitioned, and there's, you know, very few fuel dealers left, or um, so that is that's a concern. That is why I liked the clean heat standard. I would agree with you, Chair James. What was delivered to us by the PUC, which is what we asked for.
Yeah.
Is not workable. It's not affordable. But I also think that it is a policy that I think I agree with just about everything you said this in our earlier conversation about this policy, Representative Southworth, except repeal. Like, let's work on it. You know, I think that working on it in this biennium feels it feels difficult given the toxicity of the conversation that it surrounds this policy. Right. You know, but maybe there's opportunity. There's no reason we can't work on it with it still hanging on the wall and talk about, you know, are there things that we can do to fix it? You know, if we were to reduce the obligation of that market mechanism, what we wanted to achieve, from being all of the thermal emissions reductions to maybe some, or, you know, a quarter, that changes the calculus of how it works. You know, there are a lot of different inputs that we put in there that we could look at and see what happens if we do something different here. And in fact, that was what I was hoping we would be doing this year. But, you know, again, this was, as we all know, this ended up being a big election issue. I would say there was a lot of misinformation out there. I don't expect that we're gonna be able to push this forward, but I would love for us to look at all of the inputs and see, you know, are there ways that we can support this transition, both the businesses, because we need all of them. We need all those techs. We need those companies. We need them to be available to help keep homes warm and they know their customers. And then we need to make sure that we're connecting all Vermonters to this. So I would love to work on this, but I think repealing it takes us back. Let's fix it.
Rep. Kleppner? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, and Rep. Campbell also raised his hand, so
Oh, sorry.
I will go third in line
Okay.
this time.
I'm not sure what to do about our hard stop. We could
Yeah,
continue on, and Rep. Howland, I know, has to leave at 4:15.
I got for 2022.
We're 22.
22. We have
I'm
until
changing my phone.
4:22.
I've just observed about the weatherization program, whether the weatherization
Those are
assistance program,
measures. Yeah.
which is really a very successful program. The primary way that we deliver weatherization services, small W-2 low-income folks. I'm a former weatherization director, so I keep up on what's going on with it. I've been in touch with the current, the guy who's the manager of the program at the state level, state LEO office. And it looks like the funding is fairly stable for the next 3 years at around $20 million, which is was around 12 or so when I was involved. So it's more money, but what the money that they are lacking, money that's gone away, is money that helped with essential repairs in order to facilitate or to enable weatherization, things like upgrading electrical, taking out knob and tube wiring so they can insulate the attic, for example, or structural repairs or things like that, asbestos removal, the lead, all those kinds of things that would need to get done before they could do effective weatherization. So that's I think we have to think about that if we're going to rely on that program as the primary delivery vehicle for assisting low-income folks with reducing not only reducing their exposure to the fuel market, but also improving their quality of life. If we're going to do that, we have to be thinking ahead about how we're going to fund that program sufficiently, and I think a significant part of that, $20 million per year for the next 3 years, is federal money. So what can happen with that?
I think that Secretary, I'm just going to
Yeah.
dive in with one thing. I think that Secretary Moore told me that we're currently spending about $47 million a year on weatherization. And that we're okay for this coming year, and then we're gonna hit a cliff when ARPA money runs out, and that funding is gonna drop. So I just want to reiterate what Rep Campbell said about, if we're serious about this work, we're gonna have to find a way to pay for it.
To maintain the existing programs.
Yeah.
So
Um,
can I go?
you guys decide.
So what I'm hearing is your proposed bill, the Portable Heat Act, could all be combined in some fashion to reach the end goal.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, but I would rather work on a combined bill
Mhm.
that does everything than piecemealing with all these separate things.
Yeah.
So I just want.
I hope they have a chance to do that, perhaps in the second half of the year. Yeah,
And I'd be committed to being a huge part of that as well.
fantastic.
I would add two things. One, I think, there's no one in here who would disagree. Like, if we could make real progress on weatherization and panel upgrades, weatherization is a great way to reduce emissions and make people more comfortable and make them healthier. And, if we can do electric panel upgrades so that when the time comes, they're already wired, before we do all the installation and everything else. That would be meaningful, step forward. And, the climate action plan had something like 260 actions in it. And I think, there was a tactical approach to which ones go to A&R for rulemaking, which ones go to the legislature for enabling legislation. And in that group, how many of them do you put together and how many of them are better worked on alone, because mixing them might cause rebuttal. So, but it's not to say we can't rethink all of that and say these three would make a lot of sense to do together.
It's worth looking at.
Yeah.
It really is.
Rep Howland?
I'm concerned about the constituents that are in the range that they have enough money, they have large homes, a lot of money to maintain and heat. They're left out of the weatherization assistance because their incomes are too high, but their expenses are high.
Yeah.
And so in order for them to get to that stage of replacing with a heat pump or several heads of a heat pump, that they're going to have both burdens. They're going to have burdens of additional revenue that's going somewhere to support. I don't think we're supposed to use our hands when we talk on the floor.
Just don't hold anything in it, because I'll call a point of order.
So that they're in that gap that they're too much money to be afforded assistance, but not enough money left over to take on a note to have that to get into that stage. And I go to the dump with my garbage and and they particularly ask me about that issue. I go to the transfer station.
Yes.
It's not been only a single constituent that has asked me about that.
And I hope that you are now in a position to explain to constituents, as I have been explaining to my constituents, that there is no impact on the price of heating fuel arising from the clean heat standard, because the clean heat standard didn't go into effect. Right. So I got an email from a constituent recently.
I'm not answering that correctly. I am confused.
Okay.
So I just want to point out that was those folks that you're talking about, people who are just above the income cutoff for weatherization. Those are the folks we were trying to figure out a way to provide help for. That was the point.
It also has, I've been around the state with my visit, but I don't look at homes. I know downtown St. Johnsbury that's got post World War II housing, and we have that in my area, but we also have $700,000, 360,000, not three, excuse me, 3,600 square foot homes where you've got to move that warm air, either deliver it at several points, but you still have to run a pump to move your hot water through a hot water heating system.
I think that one of the things that was, that was so toxic really about the conversation around the Affordable Heat Act and clean heat, was what happened to this kind of conversation when it moved out into the world. Because we saw, wildly inaccurate estimates, that it was going to jack the price of heating fuel by $4 a gallon. That just became,
Went to $7 a gallon.
yeah, that just became like fact. And that was never, and then I think more importantly, and Rep. Sibilia alluded to this earlier, there was a pretty aggressive postcard and social media campaign by a national super PAC called Americans for Prosperity that sent out, I certainly received a postcard
I received six.
say from Americans for Prosperity. That is a national, that was not an in-state project. That is a national super PAC with very clear ties to big oil. And I was receiving postcards saying that the Affordable Heat Act would raise the price of heating fuel by $4, that was happening, that was a fact, that Vermonters were going to be forced to install heating pumps or swap out their furnaces. And that really polluted the kind of thoughtful conversation we're having here now. And it was really unfortunate. So I know you have to go. So I guess my final thought, we'll continue these conversations. Right, Bailey, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to throw in my 3.5%.
Yeah.
But I agree with Representative Southworth. I think we need to look at repealing, step back. If there's part of that law that we can rework, I'll look at it. But Vermonters are tapped out. We don't have any more money for taxes. And even if it's 10 cents, even the Rep. Moore's bill is starting to tax it on the broadband. It's getting out of control.
So
That's just my thoughts. My constituents saying we're tapped out. We don't have any extra money.
So
So mine are too. And so, I am really worried about things like that we don't control, like what we're about to see with all of this, all of these Trump tariffs. And, what have we done to try and protect Vermonters? Like we can't, and for me, protecting Vermonters in that case is what are the things they're going to be exposed to? And, this was after COVID, what have we done to protect Vermonters from the volatility in the fossil fuel market? This was part of that. So I agree. Mine are tapped out as well. Inflation has been really hard. But things are not standing still.
So let's repeal it and start new then,
so
Let's mix it.
I'll counter
at the same time.
I will
Repeal it
counter
and start it.
that we will continue to have these conversations. For me, finding a path forward does not begin with any of the repeal bills that are on our wall. So I can be as clear as I can be, that repealing the work of the legislature, especially when we've, I think, pretty clearly established that the clean heat standard is not taking effect, isn't a starting point. So that's where I stand on all the repeal bills.
Would you at least revisit it once we have a dollar amount on what it's going to cost us to keep going with the provisions that are not being held off?
That's you, Madam Chair. That's not me. I have thoughts myself.
Yeah, I mean, happy to, I think the fuel registry is something we need to talk about, right? So, Yeah, sure, we'll get, but I'm gonna tell you, I feel very strongly that collaborative work, compromise, finding a path forward does not start with repeal. It starts with, okay, clean heat standards not moving forward. So automatically, a policy that I felt had promise. So
I just feel like we owe it to Vermont, and we're shoving Vermonters aside again by not repealing. They have absolutely voiced this for them. And I support that statement. It is not good for any Vermont.
and it's not happening.
Yeah.
So,
-2 provisions.
yeah, so we'll find out about those things.
And I've reached out. I will let you know, Madam Chair, when I get back.
Great. Committee assignment. We need a rep for every committee. Do you guys have just 2 seconds to keep going with this?
Just a quick question.
Yeah,
So are we like the only committee doing the buddy thing? Because nobody has contacted me from.
I
Has
I
anybody
have,
heard?
yes,
Who did you
I
hear?
have a buddy on Ways and Means.
Okay, I have that. I have Ways and Means
and we heard from
approach too, right?
and approved.
approves for sure. We have a person on general and housing. We have a person on,
Did they email all of us or just you?
they emailed me and Jack's compiling a document that shows who all of our different
Oh, great.
buddies are.
I already,
Great.
the buddies document,
Yeah,
is that the same as?
that's just approves. So let's just finish and then, okay, so ag is Rep Bailey, approves are Reps Campbell and Torrey. Rep Howland is commerce. We don't have anybody for corrections. Rep Sibilia is education. Rep Morrow is environment. We don't have anybody for general and housing or GovOps. Healthcare is Rep Campbell. Human services is Rep Torrey. We don't have anybody for judiciary. Transportation is Rep Southworth and Ways and Means is Rep Plebner. I think some of these are largely going to be not a whole lot of work, to be perfectly honest,
Say
but
judiciary.
okay.
We'd be happy. I didn't realize you didn't have anybody for housing.
I'll do
Housing?
labs.
Okay.
I
Housing,
would,
Campbell.
well, I was gonna say, I'd be willing to swap health for housing.
Oh, okay.
I'll take health.
You'll take health?
Yep.
All right.
Okay, wait, what just happened? Who's-
Tori's on health.
Tori's
We
on
just,
health.
we just assigned
Campbell's
a
on-
chair on
Campbell's
this.
on.
Campbell's on housing.
Tori's,
You're in charge.
I've been used to, Torrey is healthcare.
Campbell.
Human services is Campbell.
No, no,
No.
housing.
Housing.
Who's human services?
Me.
But you're gonna do both of them.
I thought I'd offer to do one of them.
Human
Great.
services.
Well, you're
Human
doing
services
approach.
is gonna be very big.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do they have a buddy? Are they watching?
yeah, they are. Wait, so I lost track. Ag is done. Approach is Darren Scott. Commerce is Howland. GovOps is Sibilia. Who's healthcare? Corey. Human services,
I mean, unless you think somebody else should take, because I'm on.
Chris, you have to take another one. Sorry.
What's left?
Corrections or
Healthcare.
healthcare?
What would you rather?
Well, I could put
Corrections would
my,
be the broadband thing.
my former incarcerated status to use. and-
Yeah.
Okay, so you're Morrow,
You have experience?
Yeah.
and Chris, that's the broadband thing, which you're already all over.
All right.
Who's healthcare and who's human services?
I'm willing to do both, but if
Great.
somebody else wants to do.
Done. If it's too much,
I'll
we'll
let you
fix
know.
it. Okay, guys, thank you so much. We can go off.